Welcome to another coding tutorial, and in today's video I'm going to show you how to make this breathing jellyfish where we can change its shape and speed using sliders and buttons. To create this breathing jellyfish, we need to be in the WebGL mode, so you need to give in a third argument inside the createCanvas function WebGL. And basically there are two render modes, 2D and 3D, and WebGL allows us to render things in 3D. Alright, so let's first draw an ellipse. And the ellipse takes in a total of 4 arguments, the x and y coordinate of the center of the circle, and then the width and the height. Let's put it at 0, 0, and then let's do the width and the height to be, how about 300 by 300. What do you notice here? We give it an arguments of 0, 0, but it is smacked in the middle of the canvas. So within the WebGL mode, the origin is actually in the center of the canvas. Now let's do no fill. Now I'm going to use the rotate x function to rotate this shape, and I'm going to give it an argument of x, and x is going to be mapped to my mouse x location between 0 and the width, and then the degrees of 0 and 360. And because we're using degrees, I'm going to set the angle mode to also degrees. Alright, let's run. And now that I move my mouse, the circle now is rotating around the x-axis. Alright, what if we change it to y? And now it is rotating around the y-axis. How about z? Alright, can you see that? It is just rotating in the clockwise direction and counterclockwise direction, and that is because the z-axis is the axis that is going through the screen right now. So we're not going to work with rotate z, just x and y. Alright, so I'm going to set x to, how about 15, and then let's do rotate y to 45. Now we don't want just one circle because this doesn't look like a jellyfish. I'm going to declare a variable called num, and this is going to be the number of circles. So let's do, how about we do 300, and then I'm going to write a for loop that goes through I equals to 0 to I less than num, I plus plus, and we want to draw this. I'm going to put the rotate function up top. Alright, and then if we click run, we only see one circle, and that is because we still give it a constant size of 300. How about we give a new arguments here to be I, comma I. Why is it all black? You know why? That is because there are just so many circles in this space right now. So if we were to increment it by something smaller, now you see that there's a set of circles here. So I'm going to also declare a new variable. Let's call it res for resolution, and then let's set that to 10. And so we can change this, then you'll see the number of circle that is on the screen. So now I want to be able to move this set of circles up and down, and we can do that by using a translate function. So let me just quickly show you. So a translate function can take up to 3 arguments, x, y, and z. So if we put x inside the first argument, you can see that it's moving things in the x direction, but you can also see that all the circles are not moving together. And that is because when we use transformation functions, specifically in this case translate, we need to use the push and the pop functions if we want to save and return back to the original settings before we call the translate or the transformation function again. So if we put push here, and then we put pop at the end. So when we put push and pop here, push basically saves the transformation, which is a translate function here. So we translate it to this point, and then we use the pop function to return it back to the original settings where the origin point is at the center of the canvas before we call the translate function again for the next circle. So if we do that, we can see that all the circles move together now. How about if we do the y? So you can see that it's being translated in the x and y axis, right? But actually, where we want to translate is third argument, which is the depth. All right, you can see that it's only going up, and that is because the values I map it to is between 0 and 360. So if we were to do -100 to 100, then now it goes up and down more. All right, so actually I'm going to call this variable depth, and I want to move it in an oscillating motion. And an oscillating motion, specifically a simple harmonic motion, can be represented by a sine or the cosine function. So that's what we're going to do. So let's do sine of, how about angle? And then we're going to declare a variable angle and set it to 0. And we click run. And now you don't see any change. And that is because sine of 0 is 0, right? So we're not moving it anywhere. But now, what if we increment the angle by 1 at a time? It's moving, but very, very slightly, and that is because the sine function ranges between -1 and 1, so it's very small. So how about we set an amplitude and we multiply it to this sine function? And then let's set an amplitude to, how about we set it to 100? All right, so now it's moving up and down like what we want. But this still doesn't look like a jellyfish. How to make it like a jellyfish? We need to give it a different starting angle. And to give it a different starting angle, we need to add it to this expression here. So angle plus something. And to get that differences, what we want to add is, how about we add I? Because in this draw loop, I is different for each of the circles. So I'm going to comment the angle out first so we're not moving the circles. So basically right now, it's just I, right? And as you can see, the starting angle is different for all of them. And how about we actually set it to a constant size first so you can see what are the differences. So you can see that the depth are different for each of the circles, but because we also give it a different size, we get that shape that we want. And now we want to move the angle that starts at 0, and we get that movement. And how about we change the resolution to 10? And that looks really nice. Let's do 1. How about that? Okay. Before we move forward, how about we also change the colors of the background? Let's do this blue, and then I want to add the stroke color. So I could set it to white, but I could also change or vary the transparency by how much. So I want each of the circles to have a different transparency. So I want to work with this I variables here. So I could do I divided by num, right? So each will have a different value, and then times it by 255 because the transparency or the alpha value ranges between 0 and 255. All right. And the fun part about this piece is that you want to be able to change these variables as you wish, right? So what are these different variables? There is the angle for the rotation, so rotate X and rotate Y. And then you want to be able to change the number of circles, the resolutions, the amplitude that gives you the depth, right? And also the speed, right? Let's set the speed. Right now it is at 1, right? So we want to be able to change these variables. And I want to show you a way to do that using a graphical user interface, specifically sliders and a button. So if you come to this reference page here, p5.js has a built-in function called createSlider where we can create a slider. And basically within the setup function, we need to declare 3 things. First, we need to create a slider, right? And you need to put in the minimum value that you want and the maximum value that you want, right? And actually you can put in a third argument, which is the starting value that you want the slider to have. The second one is giving it a position where you want to place it. And then the last one is giving it a size. So basically how long the slider should be. So let's copy this and then put it in the setup function. And we also need to declare a variable slider. So if we click run, we have a slider. Perfect. But if it's in the WebGL mode, it's actually, yeah, it's still at the same location. Perfect. Inside the draw function, we can get the value of this slider by writing the word slider or the name of the variable dot value and then parentheses. So slider dot value. And how about we print out this value so we can see? So it starts at 50. Interesting. We didn't even give it at 50. What if we do 0? I guess the default value might be 50. And then now if we move this, so it ranges from 0 to 255. And now we can use this value here to manipulate our sketch. Perfect. I want to also be able to write the value next to the slider. To do that, I need to be able to write text on the canvas. And when I was trying to figure this out, I think drawing text or using a text function within WebGL is a little bit different from doing it in the 2D mode. First, what you want to do is that you want to come to this arrow here, click the plus sign, and then upload file. And you want to upload the font file that you have. All right, and so once your font is uploaded, then you want to come to the setup function and you want to write a function called load font. And in the first argument, you're going to put in the name of your font. In my case, it's going to be roboto-black.ttf. So in this example, I'm just uploading my font file right in this folder here. But you can also put your font file in a different folder. So if you were to do that, you would also need, for example, like the name of your folder, \, and then the name of your font. But because I don't have it right now, so I can just do this. All right, and then in the second argument, I'm going to put draw text. Now we're going to write a function called draw text, and draw text is going to take in an argument called font. And then inside here, I'm going to write text font and put in font as the first argument and then the size of the font. So I'm going to do 11. And I'm going to give it a color fill of 255, so white. And also, for some reason, you need to put draw text function below the setup function for it to not give you an error. Because when I did it above the setup function, it did give me an error. So just be aware of this. All right, let's click run to make sure everything is okay. Everything is okay. Inside the draw function now, we can draw the text. And so we just put in text. And then we just put in what we want to write. So for example, that slider is, why don't we just put slider? And then comma, and then the second and the third argument is going to be the X and Y location. Right now we have this position at 100, 100. How about we do size of 100? So we can give this X position at 120 and then Y position to be the same at 10. Let's try that. Oh, it's all the way over here. I think if we were to put 0, 0, let's try that. It is at the center of the canvas. So you want to also move it width divided by 2 to the left and then height divided by 2 up first before you add any offset that you need. So what was it, 110 that we did it initially? All right. Okay, so it's a little bit too much up there, so let's do 30, 25. So you can play around with these variables to make sure that your texts are aligned with your sliders. And then I also want to write one more thing, which is the slider value. So slider.value, and I want to move it maybe to 150 here. And so when we move the slider, we can see what is the value. So now that we understand how to use a slider, how to create one, and also how to write a text in this WebGL mode, let's put all of this in a class. We can go back to this sketch here, click this arrow, click the plus sign, and then click create file. I'm going to name this file slider.js. Before we start writing a class, let's go to index.html, come to this line of code, and then copy and paste. Change the name sketch here to the name of your new file, in my case slider.js, and then that's it. This is how we integrate a new JavaScript file into the program. All right, let's go back to slider.js. Start by writing the word class, and then I'm gonna name it slider. I'm gonna give it 2 functions, so constructor function and then the display method. So inside the constructor function, so I'm going to just copy and paste these set of codes that we already wrote. All right, and then make sure that you put this dot for all of this. Create slider. We don't want to have a hard-coded numbers here. What we want is we want to give it 3 parameters, so min, max, and then how about start? So this is the starting value. Then we can put these in here. All right, and then the position here, how about we also give it px and py for position x and position y. This px equals to px and this py equals to py. Then we're going to set the position here. And I think we can give a hard-coded size here for 100. I want all of my sliders to be of the same size. All right, and then in display, do we want to work with the text now? Why not? Okay, so in display, let's just copy the text part here. And then actually let's give it another parameter called name. And this is going to be a string argument, and we're going to draw or write this name onto the text, right? We want the width divided by 2 plus 120 here. So 120 here basically is this dot px plus an offset of 20, right? And then 25 here is this dot py plus 25. Actually, maybe just plus 5. So let's try that, and we can change it afterwards if it doesn't align in the way that we want. So all right, so let's just try to create just one slider. Let's go back to sketch.js, and then now let slider, inside the setup function, we put slider is a new slider object. And then what do we have here? Let's copy this. So we have the name. So let's start. Why don't we just use rot x right now for rotation x, because we want to give the first slider for the rotation of the x-axis. Min will do 0. Max will be 360, right? Then let's give it a start of 15 here. And then position, we want to put it at the top left corner here. So what if we just do 10 by 10? Actually, let's try to click run now. Oh, the name has to be a string. That should be correct. Oh, I need to do this dot name here, and then this dot slider dot value, and start. Perfect. Okay, let's go back here. The things that I want to change. First, I want to actually make the canvas a bit bigger. Okay, and I also want to move this jellyfish. Let's move it. How about 100 to the right, and then 50 up. Okay. Next, I want to also display the text, right? So what we need is slider dot display. You must load and set font. Oh, okay. So that's exactly what we need, which we already got here. So, okay. So first, upload the font file, right? Then load font here. And then Also need the draw text function. Okay, should work now. All right, but it is right here, but we want it right here. I'm going to stop this from moving for now. So we want to move it out a little bit. So let's do 120 here. Maybe this has to be 120 and 180. Not too bad. Okay, how about 160? And then I want to move it down more. Let's just do 10 by 10. Maybe 11. Okay, we can fix that later. Let's just try to create a bunch of these sliders. But before we do that, I also want to use, because right now this slider doesn't have anything to do with the jellyfish yet. So you want to go back to slider.js and then create one more thing, which is actually do it in display. This variable is going to be called val. And this is going to be this.slider.value, right? So this is the value of the slider. Okay, and then if we go back to sketch.js, we want to, instead of doing 15 here, it's going to be slider.val. All right. Yay! All right, so now we can use a slider to move jellyfish. Time to make a bunch of sliders. All right, so we want to make let rot x, let rot y, then we want the number, right? The number of circles. We want the resolution, we want the amplitude, and then we want the speed. Let's start with that, and then we can comment all of this out. For now, we don't need slider anymore. Then I'm going to copy and paste this 6 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The reason I'm copying and pasting right now is because it has a different min and max values and also the starting values. So I think personally it's easier for me to do this for the 6 sliders. But yeah, you can come up with a more efficient way if you want. All right, so now we do rot x here, and then rot y will also be between 0 and 360. And then third one, how about the number? Let's do 1 to 400, and then we start at 300. And then the resolution we can do between 1 and 10. And then actually let's do 15, and then let's start at 10. And then we want speed to be between 1 and 10, and then start at 1. Then the last thing is the amplitude, which is set to 100 right now. So the amplitude will be a slider at between 100, maybe 10, I don't know, to 200, and at 100. Let's do that. And then we also need to change all of these strings, right? So this will be num, this will be res, speed, and amplitude. Okay, all right, let's just click run. Oh, we also need to change all of the x and y. Actually, just y. So 20, 30. Basically, I'm giving it a spacing between each of the sliders of 10 pixels. Let's try that. Okay, it seems a little bit too close, so I'm going to do, all right. And then we basically need to copy and paste this so that we can draw the text. I know, don't give me errors. Okay, so we can delete that, and then we don't need slider anymore. And so now the value here has to be rot x, right? And there's nothing here because I commented out all of this. So now we need to put in, this will be rot y.val, this will be num.val, res.val, num.val, amp.val, and the last one is speed.val. m.val. Angle is not defined. Okay. All right, let's define angle equals to 0. Nice. Okay, now we can rotate X. We can rotate Y. We can increase or decrease the number of the circles, give it more resolution, change the speed, and change the amplitude. That's so cool. The last piece is I want to add a button. And I want this button to control from it being moving. So basically, I'm controlling whether the angle is moving or not. And to create a button, we can use a built-in function called createButton here. And first, within the setup function, we need to declare a variable, set it to a function called createButton, and then give it a name that is going to be displayed on the button. And then we give it a position. So let's start with that. All right, so I'm going to create a new variable here. I'm gonna comment it as GUI variables, GUI for graphical user interface. All right, and then inside here, I'm gonna create the button. So button will be equals to create button, and I'm gonna have it say play, and I'm gonna put it at 10, and then I'm gonna put it below all of these sliders. So let's do, how about 150? All right, so now we have this play button, but this play button is not doing anything. A little bit useless right now, but that's okay. When I press the button, I want it to either stop the jellyfish from moving or move the jellyfish. I'm going to also create a new variable, a Boolean variable called play, and play will start at a value of true. And then I'm going to create a new function called play button. And play button basically is gonna do one thing. It's gonna set play to equals to whatever play is not. All right, so we can use this expression here. So this is an expression that means not or the opposite. So if play is true, it will set to false. If play is false, it will set to true. So now we need to write a mouse click function. So when the mouse is clicked, we want to call the function play button. And then, all right, and so now we need a conditional statement that says if play is true, then we increment the angle. And if play is not, then we do not increment the angle. So let's run. So it starts with play equals to true. That's why this thing is moving. So if we click play, it stops moving. And then if we click it again, it moves, stop. Then now we can also change the rotation, the numbers, and everything is still the same. And that's how you make a breathing jellyfish with a pretty cool graphical user interface. Yeah, I hope this is useful for you if you want to create some experiments where you can use sliders and buttons to change the different variables of your experiment. Give this one a try.